Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning and welcome to the Italian Senate. I would like to say at the very outset that the Senate is really proud to host a session of this important symposium and to do so in such an historic and beautiful setting. I would like to thank the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy for inviting me and to thank you also on behalf of the President of the Senate for choosing to hold today's meeting in the Italian Parliament. There is, I believe, a substantive reason why an important international conference on interfaith dialogue is being hosted in the Senate. In our globalized world, interfaith dialogue is a tool to build peace among peoples at international level and at the same time to build security and social cohesion within individual countries. For this reason, construction of interfaith dialogue is not a topic that can be confined to religious institutions. It should also be the focus of policy making and political action. Starting from the year 2000, events have taken place which have changed the way life is led over this planet. The globalization of commodities and financial markets and the wider availability of technologies and the internet have ushered in a new era. In the new millennium, the lifestyles of 7 billion people, the total number of the Earth's population, are changing, and for many of us, considerable changes have already taken place. Globalization has brought about sweeping social, environmental, economic, and population changes. Italy is affected by these radical changes and, like the rest of Europe, is also a key player of it. The Mediterranean Sea is the mare nostrum, bordering countries with different cultures and religion, as Mr. Gozzi mentioned before. Historically, the Mediterranean was an area of contamination and intercultural integration, an integration which too often in our history was the outcome of bloody conflicts. Over the past couple of decades, the Mediterranean was and will continue to be the stage of political upheavals, both for countries bordering the sea and for countries that see the Mediterranean as a wave out from war and poverty. These upheavals produced and are still producing migration flows that bring masses of people to our coasts. To these people, Italy is called to provide dialogue, hospitality, tolerance, and ability to understand diversity. Italy is the frontier of Europe. Its institutions must make an organizational and economic effort, and its people a cultural effort, a very strong effort. This is an effort we must share with the rest of Europe, knowing that immigration for countries with a decreasing population accounts for an important factor of economic growth. Policies to help migrants settle in are essential to prevent or tackle the risk of fundamentalism, which might be triggered or fueled by social exclusion and poverty. This risk is even greater now that nationalism and xenophobia are returning or getting harsher in European countries. But if religion can give rise to fundamentalism, religious culture as a universally unifying factor might provide a shared spirituality that can serve as a launchpad for dialogue and mutual understanding. Religion can be either a unifying factor or a source of bloody conflict. Interfaith dialogue and dialogue-building policies must make religions a positive factor for cooperation among people from different backgrounds, for integration and for social inclusion, knowing full well that religious intolerance can be consciously fueled to become a powerful instrument of political hegemony and power. During the last few decades, great progress was made in interfaith dialogue among the great monotheistic religions, thanks to the effort of their spiritual leaders. In this framework, I would like to recall the last important step in this direction, the 17 March meeting of leaders of the three monotheistic faiths during the Global Freedom Network. The meeting produced an agreement aimed at stemming modern forms of slavery and trafficking in human beings and at cracking down globally on these crimes. This is but one tangible example of what may be achieved if we open up to the dialogue, an example also for policymakers. It is up to politicians and secular institutions, governments, parliaments, regions, and local government bodies that are closer to the public to strengthen and disseminate the values of understanding diversity, tolerance, and social inclusion. These values are the spawning ground for interfaith dialogue. Schools and education providers in general are called to play an important role in forging tomorrow's citizens, starting with preschool children. They must pave the way for the development of a civil culture founded on cultural and religious pluralism. It is through education that we become aware of the cultural milieu where religions are rooted. This enables the young to learn the history, traditions, and value of such cultures, and therefore to acknowledge their dignity. Through education, we understand the historical, philosophical, and cultural bonds of religions. These bonds must be used to the full in order to enable understanding, mutual respect, and dialogue. I would like to stress that education and the young are an important channel to spread the culture of tolerance, pluralism, and interfaith dialogue also within families. And this is very important to enlarge the role of education. It is therefore very significant and important also for the future of interfaith dialogue that Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi has put schools at the center of his government's plan of action by announcing sizable investments in school renovation and teacher training programs. Schools will play a strategic role not only in training students to live and compete in the society of knowledge and technological innovation, but also to make our citizens ready to live in the era of globalizations. Political institutions have a duty to render such principles as equal rights and anti-discrimination, which are enshrined in our Constitution, effective both in the workplace and in society at large. These principles are a prerequisite for the development of the conditions for dialogue between people of different faith and culture. The outcome of this dialogue should be a shared notion of civil and constitutional values, which is the prerequisite for sharing a common citizenship in our country, in every single European country, as well as in all Europe. Thank you very much for your attention.